Welcome to our video on best practices in writing a meeting abstract. So why would you submit an abstract to a scientific meeting and then present at that meeting? Well, first, you need to present your research and findings to others in your field so they can see the kind of work you're doing. Presenting also gives you an opportunity to develop both your writing and your speaking skills. You can receive on-the-spot peer review of the research that you're doing, as well as your skills in communicating that research. And you can network with other scientists and perhaps develop some future collaborations. Now, to make a presentation, you will need to submit an abstract, and each meeting will have specific instructions for formatting and submission for that particular meeting. So, when you write an abstract, here are the key components and the key principles to follow. Remember, an abstract is a mini presentation. First, use a message title. What do we mean by that? A title that explicitly states what the research has discovered. It's a complete sentence that uses a very strong verb. Next, your abstract should establish a context, a general statement about the area being researched and its significance, the facts. You should state your hypothesis. What was the research designed to discover? And ideally, the explanation for the outcome of the research. You need to explain your methods very succinctly in 1 or 2 sentences. These are the approaches taken to execute the research, including any models or systems you might be using. And you need to summarize your results, the outcomes of the research. This can include data in addition to prose statements. You should also point to the significance of the research. Why is this outcome important? What can be concluded from the research? And then finally, you need to make acknowledgments. Acknowledge funding and technical support, as well as reveal any disclaimers or conflict of interest. Here, the submission guidelines for your specific meeting will provide cues about how you should acknowledge your funding and express your disclaimers and conflict of interests. These are the principles you need to follow when writing an abstract. So, let's look at an example from the 2009 Society of Neuroscience meeting. You can pause the video here to read this abstract, or you can download it from the CLIMB website. First, let's look at the title. Remember, a good title explicitly states what the research discovered. It's a complete sentence that uses a strong verb, and that's what we have here. Fragile X-related protein 1 localizes to large dendritic spines in the hippocampus. Now, does the example that we have here establish a good context? Indeed, it does. Note how it also sets up a complication, that unknown area that is being researched. In response to synaptic activity, several new proteins are synthesized in dendrites. These proteins are required for long-lasting changes in synaptic strength and spine size, and likely allow for synaptic modifications that are important for learning and memory. Fragile X-related protein controls mRNA translation in the cytoplasm of non-neuronal cells. We previously showed that FXR1P is expressed in the developing hippocampus and localizes to a subset of spines and pyramidal neurons. However, it is not yet known whether FXR1P regulates mRNA translation in neurons and whether this regulation can occur locally in dendrites and dendritic spines. So the example establishes a good context and lets you know about the complication and the area of research that's being addressed. The abstract states the hypothesis explicitly. We hypothesize that if FXR1P controls protein synthesis at spines, then overexpressing FXR1P might lead to a change in spine size. Very precise, very succinct. Note that even in an abstract, you can explain your methods, and they do a good job here. To test this hypothesis, we use biolistic transfection to introduce FXR1P tagged with green fluorescent protein and membrane-targeted red fluorescent protein into CA1 pyramidal cells and mouse hippocampal slices. We imaged RFPF signals from dendrites expressing FXR1P and controlled dendrites to compare spine density, shape, and size. And they summarize their results, that outcome of the research. We found that neurons expressing FXR1P were similar in overall spine density, shape, and size to controlled dendrites. Further analysis on spines from FXR1P overexpressing dendrites showed that FXR1P localized to spines that are on average larger than spines lacking FXR1P. A nice succinct statement of the results of this research. The abstract ends here by pointing to the significance of the research, and of course that is why the outcome is important and what we can conclude from this research. These spines may be those that require ongoing protein synthesis to maintain their size and synaptic strength. Taken together, our findings suggest that FXR1P controls mRNA translation at these large spines. Finally, we need to make the proper acknowledgments, and they do so here. They explain the support they received and any particular disclosures and conflicts of interests. So to review, here are the key components and the key principles to follow. Remember, your abstract is a mini presentation. Use a message title, a complete sentence that describes what the research did and uses a strong verb. Establish a context. What about the area that's being researched and the significance of this area? What's your hypothesis? State it explicitly. What is the research designed to discover? Explain your methods. You can do so in 1 or 2 sentences. The approaches you've taken to execute the research, including any models that you might be using. Summarize your results. What was the outcome of the research? And you can include data as well as statements. You need to point to the significance of the research, why it's important, and what we can conclude from it, and then finally you need to make acknowledgments. This is the pattern of an effective abstract, and it can be done within the constraints of the number of words that your particular meeting requires for its submission. Follow this approach and you'll write a compelling abstract for your research.